Chapter 2, What is Love? Before long, as the story goes, a few of them decided to take on that experience and made it seem as if only he could guide them there. One person was Livia, who was married to one of his friends, Kimya, and a female friend named Nene. Livia was a much older woman with a seductive spirit who tried to convince Dasinga that Nene would be his perfect wife for him. All three of his friends persuaded Dasinga to go on this adventure with them. Dasinga knew Livia had manipulated his friend into marrying her. He saw her manipulative spirit as she was caught on numerous occasions, still dealing with her exes while still dating his friend, but he kept it to himself. Livia continuously tried to convince him to date Nene and wanted her to seduce him, but it failed. 1. She was a very masculine lady, and 2. He didn't even find her remotely attractive. He thought of her as only a friend, and that was it. And I might add that Dasinga was about 21 at the time and he grew up around other cultures as a child because his mother traveled a lot from state to state, again, because she worked for the armed forces. Therefore, he wasn't no feeble-minded young man. He wasn't no angel, but noticed he was surrounded by people-pleaser, and that was just not his thing. He simply let people live their lives, and he wasn't judgmental because of his upbringing. He wasn't an easy person to manipulate either. To Dasinga, Shreveport seemed to have worsened as time passed, and his hatred for the city deepened. Livia saw this and she eventually convinced Dasinga that she truly loved his friend and was now on the path of righteousness, fighting for Sabaoth. Mammalean paused. Enlightenment wasn't available back then, it only began during Wanyenyekevu's time. Back then, people went to church every Saturday or Sunday. Many ill-will people crept in and destroyed many who believed in Sabaoth. They started calling themselves preachers, ministers, and the likes, so he believed they were his friends. Atlanta, Georgia, was one of the many places he had been while in the military. So, they suggested he take them there. The agreement was that they would travel there and work together until they could move on their own, but once they got there, it was something else. That night Sabaoth showed him a dream that they would leave him there stranded. He confronted them the next day about the dream. Livia smiled with her eyes aglow. She said, and I quote, "Baby, I would never do that to you. We love you." So that evening, after a long day of searching for work, he returned to where they stayed, and they had indeed left him there, stranded. They never thought Dasinga was qualified to be with them because he had his own way of thinking and served Sabaoth the way he knew him, not the way they did, for they were religious, and he was spiritual. So, they left him. Mammalean turned to Cush, "Son, as you know, Sabaoth looks at the heart, and man looks at the so-called outward sins, but they never look at the inward sins that corrupt the heart, because for one thing, we can't." Cush looked at Mammalean. "What do you mean?" Dasinga smoked and drank, but his heart was pure. Livia used to do things of that nature plus, she was a reformed prostitute at that, but after her salvation, she only changed her outward appearance but used her gifts as a manipulator. She used seduction and was narcissistic toward everyone, even her children. Grooming everyone she taught to be that same way. Dasinga admired Livia because she spoke with power when it came to Sabaoth, but he was young, naive, and trusting. Later he realized, she was just imitating or mimicking prophetess Elimelech. However, amid his trials and tribulations, Sabaoth showed him favor in many ways, even to his amazement. Determined to achieve his goals, no matter what, and Sabaoth made it, where he could do just that, but he did endure great trials and tribulations in the process. He met many celebrities that he admired growing up and they gave him advice. They saw his determination, some took advantage of him and his gift, and some nurtured it. He was homeless countless times, but he didn't care and made do with what he had. Eventually, he sold drugs, another popular thing in those times. It wasn't his type of thing, but he had to eat and needed a place to sleep, which cost money. There were many drugs introduced at this time. They had this one drug called ecstasy, used in dance clubs or during sex, and a few others like methamphetamine or simply meth. Most were euphoric or aphrodisiac drugs, but the one drug popular with our people during this time was crack cocaine. Crack was a drug introduced to our people to get rid of us, and it was shipped into the country by our country, and hand-delivered to our communities, like alcohol was hand-delivered to the Native Americans. It became a pandemic to our people, until Sabaoth presented opioids to theirs. Our pandemic had people selling their life's possessions for a little white rock that cost $5 to $10. It had sons prostituting their mothers and daughters killing their fathers, just for a 2-second high, and believe you me, they wanted more. Crack had been around for at least 10 years and he never thought about it. He heard horror stories about its effect on people, but he never thought he would ever be involved with it. When he was right in the middle of it all. Dasinga wished to stop selling drugs. After he experiencing it for himself, he saw what it was doing to his people. He saw so many going to jail and prison for extended periods. When his firstborn son, Justin, was just a few months away from being born, he didn't know what to do. 1 ounce of cocaine was like a 5-day stay in jail for white people, but 1 ounce of crack for our people, you had a minimum of 5 years. However, you can't make crack without cocaine. He was making good money, but the rewards were horrible. What do you do with a pocket full of money and can't buy a damn thing? So, he invested it all into music. Sabaoth appeared in his dreams, and he stopped because his conscience kept tormenting him, but it didn't take long before he started again because of hunger pains. He felt himself lose hope, depression set in and he started dabbling with harder drugs to kill his pain and frustrations. To be a drug dealer, you must be heartless, and most drug dealers soon became human, organ, weapons, and even sex traffickers. You see, money drives them and the more, the merrier. Dasinga's heart and conscience continued to bother him, and the embarrassment of admitting himself to a clinic for drug addiction outweighed his conviction of selling and harming others for monetary gain, not to mention the wrath of Sabaoth. He had nowhere to go because his friends all sold dope. He eventually started smoking with what they called back in those days, crack hose, after 2 days. He thought he was a true crackhead. One day, he took some crack from a friend to sell, but instead, he smoked it himself. That night, living in an abandoned apartment, he found himself using the bathroom on the carpet because the toilet smell was too much to bear. As he got up, he didn't even wipe himself. A mirror stood in front of him, and he looked at himself in disgust. He heard a voice. It was Sabaoth who asked him, "What are you doing? Look at you, ye of little faith." He didn't know what to do, but he was a veteran. He admitted himself to the local VA hospital as an addict. To be honest, that's what he would have been if he had not done so. This was when he met Ron Tyner. Ron was a slender, short man with a problem with alcohol and crack cocaine as well. This program was for 90 days. Afterward, you were transferred to a halfway house for another 90 days. After the first 60 days of both programs, they were given weekend passes. Dasinga wasn't from there, and the only relative he had was his newborn son, Justin, and the mother of his child, who didn't allow him visitation except on Christmas and sometimes not even then. One Saturday morning after breakfast, Ron approached him while Dasinga was taking a cigarette break. "Yo, dude, our first 60 days are out of the way. Do you want to come with me to my brother's? We're having a barbecue." Dasinga's eyes lit up. "Hell yeah, I'm tired of being around here, especially on the weekend when I don't have to." While en route, sitting on the bus, Ron was in deep thought and turned to Dasinga. "Dasinga, I have something to tell you," Ron said as he continued. "I know you agreed to come over to my brother's since you don't have family here in Atlanta, but I've been meaning to tell you something, and I guess you're about to find out today. 'Cause ain't no shame in my game." Dasinga was on the bus, with a confused look. "What the fuck are you talking about, man? Spit that shit out." Ron laughed. "My family is not my blood family, they're just friends I've known for a long time," Dasinga said. "For real? That's what you wanted to tell me, please. I got friends at home like that I too call family as well. That's not a big deal. You act as if you're from a pack of wolves, and we're about to meet them." A smile quickly became a frown on Ron's face. "What I'm trying to say, dude, I'm gay." Dasinga was surprised. "You act like a man, dress like a man, and you don't have feminine ways, as far as I can tell." Ron had a serious look on his face as he explained. "When I was in the army and stationed in Germany, I learned how to mask it, plus the motto was, don't ask, don't tell. So, they didn't ask, and I didn't tell, but I would go off base and party my ass off in Germany, literally. I was young and promiscuous as hell, and I eventually contracted AIDS. Once I discovered I had AIDS, I began to do more than alcohol and started in an out-of-control spiral motion since I felt it had handed me a life sentence. You only live once, so they say. Dasinga had mixed feelings of being confused, mad, and sad simultaneously. Bitch, you ain't gay. Hold on, you have AIDS? For real, man? That means, you finna die? Ron shook his head. Nah, I thought so too, at least, no time soon. The doctor said, as long as I take my medicine, I'll be just fine until they stop working, that is. But for now, the medicine is keeping the symptoms at bay. Ron hesitates for a minute. The reason I'm telling you is the place we are going is filled with men and women who are straight, gay, pansexual, or omnisexual. They won't mess with you if you tell them you're not gay. They are great guys, except for Smithy. He's over the top all the time, but I've talked to my brother. He got to work today. And my brother is the guy who owns the house. He's not my real brother, he's one of my lovers. Dasinga said. Damn. One of them? How many lovers do you have, and do they know about your condition, or each other? Use a hoe. Ron laughed. Damn right. But we use protection. There was silence between the two for a moment, and Ron said, if you want to go back, that's cool, but I thought you wanted to get away from that place for a while, and I was headed over here, plus this a barbecue, it ain't no damn orgy. If it were, I would not have even invited you. We will have food, music, and alcohol. However, I don't drink, of course, except for my O'Douls, but that's non-alcoholic. Dasinga just sat there on the bus, thinking for a moment. Hell, I'll go, 'cause we're almost there, but if one of them motherfucker looks at me sideways, I'm outta there. They caught another bus once they arrived at West End train station. Since there was hardly anyone on this bus, Ron felt the need to explain himself. When I was young, my uncle bought me things, and at the time, I didn't know what he was doing, but after a while, he started molesting most of my friends and myself. The gifts and money he showered us with were too good to let go. Pausing, he continued. Many, if not all, of the people I know, who's gay, someone molested us, either someone in the family or close to the family. Some might agree or disagree with this statement, but I believe afterward, most but not all, became promiscuous or gay. I blamed myself for letting it happen for a long time, but I let it continue. He would give us money and, hell, anything we wanted. I soon enjoyed it and am not ashamed of who I am. Dasinga had served in the military and had been around many people who had different cultures. He had learned by experience that judging people who didn't think or act like him was wrong. He didn't have to agree or disagree with what they thought, all he had to do was be himself. Cultural and religious differences were typical, but for the first time, he faced sexual differences, but he just added it to the list of differences people had. Ron continued, we have different opinions, even in our, I'll call sexual orientation group. There are 3 types of gay men. The ones like me, who dress like a man, and act like a man but are gay. Then you have the one that dresses like a man but outwardly shows their gay tendencies, and then some dress like a woman and act like a woman. This last group is the ones I can't stand. Dasinga was confused. Why? You can't stand them? Ron said, if you're gay, and you don't have to put on a show to prove you're gay. As a matter of fact, there is a great division among us. Jeffrey Dahmer was gay, but because his ass was going around eating motherfuckers, they didn't want him associated with the gay community. I'm starting to hear people talking about binary and non-binary. What the fuck is that? You just wait, I'll give it 20 years, and they will be going around saying we need to break down pronouns and genders or give us a classification, or both. Dasinga thought for a moment. I think the kind of gays that would be damaging to women would be the kind that dates a woman, then after she falls in love with them and they suddenly tell them, hey, I'm gay. It would tear them apart. Ron then said. That's bisexual, and being on the DL, but it's still gay. Well, I have some friends who do that, but even that is being accepted, for a lot of these lonely-ass women now, who just want to say they have a man. You will be amazed at all the things Atlanta cater to in the homosexual, I guess, you can say, genre. They have gay bars, sex clubs and more, and most of these rich athletes, actors, singers and other whose gay finances them. Many come to Atlanta straight, but leave gay. Dasinga shook his head. Damn, I had no idea. I seen that there's a lot of them around here, especially Midtown and Buckhead, and some of them, you can't even tell them apart from women, until you get up close to them, and what the fuck is a DL? Ron shook his head. I knew your ass wasn't gay, when I first saw you. But you were different, I just didn't know what it was. That's why, I could open up to you and tell you, my problems. But I never told you I was gay. It's not a problem for me, more like a situation. But yeah, your ass is green as fuck. DL means down low man. Dasinga shook his head. It all sounds so confusing to me. They continued their conversation about the topic the entire ride. Before they knew it, they were at their stop on the corner of Avon Street and Cascade Avenue. Once there, it wasn't what he thought. Everyone that came over didn't even appear to be gay at all and dressed nicely, and not one of them seemed to even act gay. But he noticed a few males with feminine ways and a few females who dressed and acted masculine, but it did not bother him. With good music, delicious food, and a few jokes, everyone was enjoying themselves. Hours later, Dasinga hears a voice. Okay, you bitches. I rushed my ass over here, straight from work. Let's party. It was Smithy, and Dasinga did not have to guess who he was or be introduced. He knew that was him, for he was everything Ron said. He was loud, annoying, and rude. Who do we have here? Smithy said as he looked up and down at Dasinga and smiled with his eyes raised. Dasinga smiled and simply said, Hi, my name is. Smithy said, Nah child, really, what's up with you? Dasinga was trying not to be rude. My name is Dasinga, but I'm not gay, I'm a friend of Ron. Smithy said, You're not gay now, just wait till I get finished with you. You will never want another piece of catfish. Dasinga looked at Ron and mouthed, Catfish? Ron smiled, to put it nicely, a woman. Dasinga offended, Well, that's my cue, it's time for me to go. Ron said. No, hell no, it's time for Smithy to go. Ron grabbed Smithy by the arm and rushed him to another room. After a few minutes, he returned, and Smithy said to Dasinga, I'm sorry, and blew him a kiss. Dasinga became outraged and was about to fight. Ron shook his head and asked one of his friends to take them to the nearest train station. Smithy said, What? What did I do? Cush interrupted, Mammalean, can you stop for a minute? I got to use the bathroom. That tuna went right through me. Pulling over, Mammalean said, It might have been that damn mayo someone left out of the icebox. I'll finish when you get back. Cush said as he hid behind some bushes. So far, it doesn't sound like a love story I'm used to hearing, unless Dasinga was gay. Mammalean laughed, No child, there is more than the love you have for your wife. Plus, Ron played a big part in Dasinga's relationship with Decay. They were only friends, and Ron never approached Dasinga in that way. Ron loved Dasinga like a real brother. He was the first straight man who didn't look down on him because he was gay. But if you hurry, I'll finish telling you. Cush was silent for a minute, then said, Looks like I'm going to be a while, Mammalean. Mammalean waited for a few minutes and said, Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies. Cush said, For real, Mammalean? Right now, while I'm using it? Cush hesitated. Who is Nelson Mandela? Cush said, On a mission, your worst enemy is idle time. Mammalean replied, Who is Nipsey Hussle? Mammalean then asked, You can't make decisions based on fear and the possibility of what might happen. It was a few seconds later, Cush replied, Who is Michelle Obama? Cush, in turn, said, If I didn't define myself for myself, I would be crunched into other people's fantasies, for me and eaten alive, Mammalean said. I can't remember that one, Cush said. Audre Lorde, writer, feminist, womanist, librarian, and civil rights activist. Okay, it's still my turn then. Start where you are with what you have. Make something of it and never be satisfied. Mammalean said, okay, I know that one. Who is George Washington Carver? She thought, I prayed for 20 years but received no answer until I prayed with my legs. Walking out of the bushes and zipping up his pants, Cush said, who is Frederick Douglass? He headed to the back of the wagon and washed his hands. I needed that. Shaking her head, Mammalean said. I hope you done used up a gallon of water to wash your doggone hands. That's water for these horses. Now, come on here, let's go. Mammalean thought for a minute, okay, as I was saying, you know that there's more than one type of love, don't you, son? Cush said. I know of a few. Mammalean shook her head, well, let me tell you all of them so you won't be confused. There are about 8 different types of love people can have for one another. There's agape, spelled A-G-A-P-E, a selfless, unconditional love. Eros, spelled E-R-O-S, which is passionate, physical, and romantic love. It expresses sexual passion and desire. Philia, spelled P-H-I-L-I-A, it's affectionate love. It is the love you feel for your friends or platonic love without sexual acts. And then there's Philatia, spelled P-H-I-L-A-U-T-I-A, self-love. Most people think self-love is narcissistic, selfish, or stuck on themselves. However, self-love is not unhealthy. It's necessary to give and receive love from other people. We cannot give to others what we don't have. If we don't love ourselves, how can we genuinely love others? Storge, spelled S-T-O-R-G-E, that's familiar love. It feels like philia, but this love is more like a parent-child love or the kind you have for a best friend. Then there's pragma, spelled P-R-A-G-M-A, is the love me and my husband had. It's enduring love, the opposite of eros. See, Eros's love burns out quickly because of its passion and intensity. However, pragma is a love that has matured and developed over time. The old married couples who have been together since their teenage years and still hold hands, this kind of love almost became existed. This type of love doesn't require a lot of effort in a relationship. Both people are good at making compromises, and each of them puts in equal measures to make the other person happy. Mammalean stared into space for a minute and swiped a single tear from her eye. Oh baby, Mammalean, sorry, got to thinking, that's all. Cush said, it's okay. Then she continued. Ludus, spelled L-U-D-U-S, which is playful love, a feeling of infatuation in the early days of romance. If you've been in love before, you know what I'm talking about. It's the butterflies in your stomach, the giddiness you feel when you see your love walk through the door, and the feeling of never wanting to be without them. And lastly, it's mania love, M-A-N-I-A, which is obsessive love, not necessarily a friendly type of love because it is obsessive. This type of love can lead someone into madness, jealousy, or even anger. That's because the balance between Eros and Ludus is terribly off. Many people who experience this type of love suffer from low self-esteem. They fear losing the object of their love, and this fear compels them to say or do some crazy-ass shit to keep them. If not kept under control, mania can be very destructive sometimes. Cush then said, okay, Mammalean, you and Mr. Valley have Ludus love for one another. Mammalean embarrassed, hush your mouth, me and Valley are just friends. Cush said, Mammalean? You both are old, and he is always calling you ma'am, Mammalean, with a strange look, so? He's the only one you tell to quit saying ma'am to. Don't you think love can be found with him? Cush was being nice, for he knew she needed love just like anyone else, but Mammalean just said, I ain't old, I'm mature, that's all, mature, you remember that. Cush laughed, you are old to me, then he smiled and sarcastically said, I'll explain that to you later, and they both laughed. Mammalean, changing the subject, now, let me finish my story, ain't nobody got time for you and your wannabe, Cupid ass. She sat there, guiding the horse, let's see, oh yeah, Dasinga. Had never gotten close to anyone that was gay before, and if he knew Ron was gay, he probably would have gotten to know him, but once he found out, they had already became friends. Anyways, Dasinga and Ron's last days at the VA came and went, and they kept in contact occasionally. He was about 27 years old during this time, when he finished his stay at the VA and was sent to a halfway house, because he had nowhere to go and Ron went to stay with his brother. Since he had nowhere to go, he had to complete another 90 days at their halfway house. As a requirement to stay there, he had to attend AA meetings, and find a job after the first 30 days, but he found one in 2 weeks as a security guard at Southwest Hospital, working from 11 at night to 7 in the morning. A few months later, he moved into a regular rooming house, more like a bed and breakfast building, and was content with his living arrangement. Mammalean? What's a hospital, A meetings, and AVA? Mammalean laughed as she stopped and explained everything he didn't understand. Once he understood, she quickly began her story again. Now, where did I stop? Cush smiled. He moved to that halfway house and got a work permit at that hospital in the Southwest? Mammalean smiled. Southwest Hospital was the name of the hospital. Okay, one night while at work, he saw a beautiful woman he had never seen before. She was a slender woman who walked with grace, poised, and eloquence. One of the most beautiful things he had ever seen in his life was walking towards him in the hallway as he was making his rounds in the hospital. He wanted to stop and talk to her, but he only nodded his head. Hello. She smiled. Hi. As she passed him, he turned around to look at her. But to his surprise, she had turned around to look back at him, and they smiled back at each other with embarrassment. They were both embarrassed, because they did not expect to see each other looking back at one another. Dasinga felt she was out of his league and would not want someone of his stature, but little did he know she was just as interested in him as he was in her. He overheard the doctors, nurses, EMT, and just about everyone were trying to talk to her. She was friendly and always spoke when she was spoken to, but Dasinga felt she would be more interested in them than him because they made more money than him. Now, Dasinga would take his Torah to work with him and read it whenever there was an opportunity to do so. By working that late at night, the opportunity came more than he thought. A week or so passed, and he had made his round and decided to read his Torah in the ER or emergency room because it was quiet and there were no patients. She was an intake receptionist in the ER, and she saw him reading the Torah. I see you read the Torah a lot. Are you a Christian? Her voice was like a breath of fresh air, soft and refreshing, with a bit of an accent he could not predetermine. He smiled, yes and no. She looked at him. What does that mean, yes and no? That's confusing. He smiled back at her. Well, do I believe in Christ? That's what they called Mshika back then. Cush had gotten lost in the story and politely said, yes I know. Mammalean continued. He said, well, do I believe in Christ? Yes. But no, I do not hold on to the traditions of men and let them dictate to me how to serve my God. That's a definite no. Amazed at his answers, she smiled. I like that. Dasinga was curious. I hear an accent I'm not familiar with because I have friends from Jamaica and Trinidad. It sounds similar, but it's different. Where are you from? She smiled, and what a beautiful smile it was, as she blushed. I'm from St. Thomas, the U.S. Virgin Islands, but my family comes from Tallulah, the British Virgin Islands. Sitting in the last row in the back of the ER, he made his way up to the front and sat down in front of her desk. What do you know about the Torah? He asked. I don't know much, but I've always been curious to learn. He was excited and told her about the Torah, and by the end of the night, he had summarized the entire book. Amazed at what he knew, she became very interested in him. Dasinga found himself caught up telling his story and was about to ask her something but thought about it. I'm so sorry, reaching out his hand. My name is Ajani, but my friends call me Dasinga. She replied as he stretched out her hand. I too was, how you say it, caught up, enjoying you tell your story. Where are my matters? My name is Decay. You also have a little bit of an accent, it sounds like Atlanta, but is different. He smiled. I'm from Louisiana. Our culture is very similar because of the slave trade. She raised her eyebrows. You know about that as well. Not many people in Atlanta care about stuff like that. When they touched each other's hands, it felt like electricity ran through Dasinga's body. They talked and joked all night before they knew it. Their shift was over. For weeks, they spoke to each other at work and quickly fell for each other. Mammalean pauses for a moment. You know what? While I'm thinking about it, his tone and his poetry turned around during this time period. Mammalean pauses again. I recall some of his previous work before he met her because of their timestamps. They were good, don't get me wrong, but they became exceptionally profound. There were poems like All the Qualities I Need. Clearing her throat, she quoted the poem. Speak your mind, that's all I ask, not trying to hear anything that's fake. So, stop with the mask. Though, there might be problems, you're the one I need, no use trying to learn anyone else, all over again. You're my woman, I'm your man. We've talked, and talked. You understand my meanings, I understand yours. There's nothing else to read, communication is the key. Just consider us as one, between you and me. You have all the qualities I need. Mammalean said, touch and go. Just for you. You know the date and time, the day and the year, better than I do. When I first started this conversation with you. I hope by now, you know it's true. I care about you. Now, you know how I feel. Let me tell you that feeling is real. Many times, I thought God sent me meat to eat. But that meat had been spoiled, or left out too long. Or even freezer burned. Then one day, I got a message from on high. To me, it was a great surprise. Feeling you, made my whole world turned. Longing for someone to see, someone to comfort me. With these weary eyes, was love for me? I hope that feeling was true, too, for you. We talked, let everything out. Didn't hold back. Yes, we both told the truth. That's how we met. I wouldn't mind falling in love with you. You are caring, sharing, loving and wise. This is no lie. Don't stop what you do. Because you are who you are, and because of that, I wrote this. Because I want you to know that this is not touch and go. Mammalean said, having sex versus making love. Cush blushed as she continued. What is the difference with making love and having sex? With sex, there's no emotional involvement. With love, there is. Sex can be performed with anyone. With love, that person has to be something special. Someone special. Sex can be purely lust, making love involves love. Today many don't believe in love. One could be in love, and the other in lust. Love, the word itself. The word has many meanings, defined by everyone differently. Either way, it seems with love's definition. None of them are expressed today. Sex is another word, many try to use it, interchangeably with love. Sex can be perverted love. Even though sex, and love to many, is the same. That's insane. There is a difference. I'm here today to make this claim. Help you see. So, when you meet someone for the first time, do you want to go to bed with them? Because of lust, or love? Let me explain. For me, if I meet someone on the street, and is turned on because she has a big butt, big breast, big, beautiful lips, nice hips. If I see that person only for that, it's lust. I want sex. But if that same person in which I meet, interests me, I get to know her, enjoy talking to her, being around her. Seeing more than just the body, eventually. That can be love. Two in love can have sex, but two in lust can't make love. These are my differences between making love and having sex.